Okay, I'd like to call the Government Operations Committee to order at 7:06 on Monday, August 21st. Can I please have a roll call?
Munz?
Yes.
Lencioni?
Yes.
Gem?
Yes.
Petrilla?
Yeah, here.
Warbaugh?
Here.
Besner?
Here.
Sulkaitis?
Here.
Folks?
Here.
Bongard?
Here. All righty. Everyone is here. Thank you very much. First up, we have, this is just for information only, video gaming statistics. If you look at the information, it looks like people are continuing to play the machines, and we as a city appreciate the revenue. Thank you very much. I'm looking for a motion, a second for the omnibus.
So move.
Moved by Warbaugh, seconded by Petrilla. Roll call, please.
Munz?
Yes.
Lencioni? Gem?
Yes.
Petrilla?
Yes.
Warbaugh?
Yes.
Besner?
Yes.
Sulkaitis?
Yes.
Folks?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. Omnibus is good to go. Next up, we have a presentation by Chief Keegan regarding an ordinance deletion. Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Alderman Weber. So this is a recommendation to approve an ordinance deleting section 2.32.040 fee for bail bond administration, chapter 2.32 Police Department, Title II Administration and Personnel of the St. Charles Municipal Code. So as you all know, the Illinois Supreme Court has ruled that the Pretrial Fairness Act and cashless bail will begin on September 18th. And then in consultation with legal from the city, Mr. Peppers and I looked at our ordinance, specifically our booking fee. Granted, a detainee cannot be detained in furtherance of maybe not paying the $50 fee, but it is maybe potentially construed as a cash bail. So with the Supreme Court ruling, we would recommend repealing this ordinance. A little further information on this ordinance: it was enacted several years ago. We have a very low collection rate. In fact, most are sent to collections, and it's about 7% that is actually collected. So with that, either Mr. Peppers or myself can answer questions. I would like to advance this forward to City Council and then line up the deletion of this ordinance along with the beginning of the Pretrial Fairness Act or the cashless bail.
Any questions up here for Chief or Mr. Peppers? No?
Move for approval.
Moved by Ryan Bongard.
Second.
By Lencioni. Roll call, please.
Munz?
Yes.
Lencioni?
Yes.
Gem?
Yes.
Petrilla?
Yes.
Warbaugh?
Yes.
Besner?
Yes.
Sulkaitis?
Yes.
Folks?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes. All right, that motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Heather McGuire, City Administrator, talking about an ordinance amending vehicles and traffic.
Good evening, and this, the fact that we had a little bit lighter of an agenda tonight gave us the opportunity to bring up a couple items that have been pending out there. The first is a recommendation to approve an ordinance regarding the handicap parking placards. The city currently issues handicap parking placards to anybody from the general public. It is not restricted to residents of the city of St. Charles. But as you can see in the executive summary, that number has started to dwindle over time, and we are required to purchase a pack of 50. And it's not a high cost. I mean, we're only talking a couple $100s each time, but unfortunately we cannot refund those or return those if they are unused each year. So as we are taking a critical look at all of our processes and seeing where we can eliminate excess costs and reduce staff time, this is one of the items that came up from our administrative staff. Each one of these issuances of placards is about half an hour worth of staff time. And like I said, we are dwindling down to just a handful of those every year. I think that is especially relevant now that we do have a DMV located in the city where people can obtain those placards. So I wanted to bring this for council discussion tonight and possible direction on eliminating this so that we can stop expending those funds and dedicating that time when we do have the adequate ability for our residents to actually get those placards from the DMV in the city of St. Charles now. So I'm happy to answer any questions or just have any further discussion on it.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mon.
I have a couple of things. So my concern with that is I wonder if people are even aware that they can access this. I personally wasn't and could have used it a couple of years ago.
Sure.
It is difficult to get into the DMV. I don't know I don't know what the process is here to get the placard. Do you have to physically come in personally? Like if I want it, I have to come in myself?
Correct. And then it's actually Tracy is the one that primarily handles it from our office.
Because the reason that I ask that is it is a pretty big burden sometimes to get into the DMV. if you have even a temporary disability. And I think that the ease of access to the city building is a little bit easier than getting into the DMV. And I sort of feel like if we can, we can't control what the state of Illinois DMV does as far as making things accessible to people, but we can create an ease of access. And I would be concerned about taking away that ease, I think. And would wonder if maybe with our redesign of our website and making things a little easier to understand on there, because I tried to find out the information myself and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, the only thing I would just say on the flip side of that is if it does become a popular program, just because of the amount of time it actually takes for this, if it starts to become that high of a number of people seeking this out, because right now it's just a supplementary duty to what Tracy offers, and because it does take so long, we would just have to take a critical look at that again to be concerned of whether or not we have the staff resources actually dedicate to that number. So it's something that I'd want to keep an eye on if we want to continue it, but point well taken.
When you say a couple $100, what is
it varies based on each year. It's between $150 and $200 for a set of 50 of them.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm in favor of leaving it as it is. I think it's a convenient service that we provide our residents, and I think for the cost, it's not worth getting rid of. I think it's a convenient service, and I don't want to create any additional barriers for anyone with a temporary handicap, whether it's 90 days or 6 months. So I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is.
Go ahead, Ron.
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, I never knew we had this in our city, that we offered this service. I think we need to publicize it more. I could see in the future maybe seeing if we publicize it more, if we get more usage of it, I think that'd be a good thing. But at the moment, I don't think we publicize it enough. I don't think it's out there that someone could do this. So I'd be in favor of keeping it at least for another year, and then we can always reevaluate it. If we publicize it and nothing happens, well, then I might reconsider. But at the moment, I think we should still keep this program.
Thank you, Ron. Go ahead, David.
I'm just going to, echo what my colleagues are saying. I think let's publicize it. To Jamie's point, that's good. I mean, if it goes gangbusters after publicizing it, yeah, your staff can monitor that. And when I first read this, I'll just be honest. I mean, we have a new commission where we're trying to provide, be inclusive and provide, and I just feel like we're like excluding people with this. Yeah. So I just want to, and again, that might be harsh, but I know
our
it's
intent was
not,
really more along the lines of this is not a city service. Typically, this is something associated with a DMV, so we are taking on a service that isn't really associated with what cities typically offer.
100% get it. That I'm sure that's not the spirit in which, but it irked me enough that I'm not going to support this. So.
Go ahead, Paul.
Not that I think it's a big deal, but I'm going to provide devil's advocate because I think that we should take a look at these things. We should do the things that we're best at. We have an amazing DMV in St. Charles. It's super easy to use. I value staff time here, and we had 3 last year. People don't know what. I see that people see that that's not a service that we're using. We have to value our time. We can only do so much. And just in the spirit of doing the things that we should do that we're good at, because we're government, we, charge taxpayers for these things. There's a lot of things that we shouldn't do. Now, is this a big deal? Probably not if we kept to it, but I appreciate the eye towards efficiency, and I think it's something that we should all have a spirit towards. So I'm going to support it, but I wanted to argue just to provide that.
And I do appreciate that comment, just because obviously everything that we delve into and we look at, we want to take a critical look at, see if it actually makes sense operationally for the city to invest the time and resources in. Certainly everything can be a convenience and a benefit to the public, and not meaning to take that part of it away, just making sure we are using our staff time most efficiently and dedicating it towards what we need to.
And just to take my time back, just to make, obviously, anybody who's suffering through anything, you could call me. We all want to help them, but the difference between being caring for people and seeing is this a service that people are using and making sense? I just don't want to conflate the two. Now, however the vote goes, it goes, but I think it's reasonable to take that perspective. So,
any other questions?
I have one question. Are these placards all consistent, and can you get these placards at the county building or is the state involved outside of the DMV?
Yeah, there are a number of other cities that also offer them. I will say we are the only city that does not restrict it to our residents. We offer it to anybody. So there are a number of surrounding communities that I think may be suggesting people come to us to obtain these. Like I said, last year the number was light, but short of eliminating this program, I would at least make the request that we are dedicating it towards our residents as opposed to other cities.
But does the county provide the service?
The county, I don't think so. It's just the other municipalities and the DMVs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Is there does someone want to make a motion in a second to bring this to vote?
I'll move.
Lencioni moves. Does someone want to second it?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gem seconds it. Roll call, please.
Munns,
No.
Lencioni,
Yes.
Gem,
Yes.
Petrilla,
No.
Wirball,
No.
Besner,
Yes.
Kulkaitis,
No.
Folk,
No.
Bongard.
Yes.
Okay. It's a no.
So I would just ask if there's any interest in revising the ordinance to limit it just to St. Charles residents then and make that request as well.
Chairman,
Would someone like to make a,
I would like, do you want to?
I would like to make that motion.
so, Munn would like to make a motion to amend it to be for St. Charles residents only. Who would like to second?
Second.
Gem will second. Roll call, please, on that.
Munns,
Yes.
Lencioni, Gem,
Yes.
Petrilla,
Yes.
Wirball,
Yes.
Besner,
Yes.
Kulkaitis,
Yes.
Folk,
Yes.
Bongard.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you. We will
Much.
prepare that for the next city council agenda. Thank you.
Yep.
The next item I have, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Heather's going to make a presentation regarding city council initiatives that have been brought up before. This is for discussion only, so go ahead, Heather.
Thank you. This is the list of items that were discussed at the workshop back on a June 26th city council workshop meeting that city councils were interested in exploring further. Now, this list tonight, I am just looking for a consensus from the council members on whether or not we want to explore these and dedicate staff time to preparation. Some of these are obviously a little bit lighter and easier to have discussion on and just add to an agenda. Some of them will require providing some detailed research and presentation by city staff. So I just want to make sure before we go down that route to make sure that we have a consensus from city council members. And just to note that we will be doing this in the future as well, attempting to hold these quarterly workshops versus biannual workshops and obtaining this list of information at that time, any initiatives the council members are interested in exploring, so we can at least condense them and corral them into a meaningful discussion versus trying to have staff every meeting respond to these. So I would appreciate it, if we can get the consensus tonight, and then we will schedule a future workshop as well for any additional items that council is looking for. And I know that some of the items on here in the bullets are a little bit hard to digest exactly what everybody was intending. I think the leadership one was one that stuck out to me, but certainly that's something we can just add to an agenda if council has a consensus on discussing that further.
Okay, so how do you?
So if we could just take them one by one, and certainly we can have a little bit of dialogue if there was a council member that wanted to bring this for discussion for any clarifications, but not, like I said, not intended for full discussion or debate tonight. Just want to know if there's consensus to bring this forward to a future committee meeting.
So you'd like to maybe just kind of define this list a little bit, clean it up a little bit?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Well, define it and then just see if there's a majority of council in support of adding this to a future committee meeting.
Okay.
So we can just start one by one, and the first one was positively promoting the city, possibly through team building or leadership training. I think that's one that is simple enough just to open up for dialogue and discussion at a future city council meeting. It was my understanding that that was intended to address the council, not specifically at a staff level.
Okay. Sure. So this is, I'm sorry, I'll just start off on this one anyways. Through team building and leadership training. Obviously, someone up on the council brought this up. Was it meant to be more for council or department heads or what?
That was my understanding, was that it was for the council
Was
as a
this one
whole.
mine?
I think this might have actually been Mark.
Actually, it was Paul's. I listened to the whole video.
Yeah, because there was a larger idea. I just in all that, I think just in, I think it's important that we all spend time understanding and having an idea, creating a culture of leadership and how we lead. Tone of how we argue, understanding the impact that we have as leaders, with each other and on the community, which goes into larger ideas about because there's definitely, multiple facets to being a leader, not only, in making law, but understanding how the things that we say and do impact things all the way from the economy, as how we conduct ourselves when we're, formally arguing anything. As you can take a look at sometimes, depending on how we make argument, how it impacts the reputation of people around the city, how it impacts the reputation, of other people up here. I think that these are important topics that we address to make sure that we are in all the things that we do and not just making law, understanding and accepting that mantle of leadership that we have, and using, our influence to bring the most benefit to all the people that we have. And when we need to address something that we may not agree with, addressing it in a way that it's seen as a positive discussion, and that we're, going through it and not, creating, we're avoiding situations that should be avoided. Let's just say that.
So if there is a majority that is interested in exploring that, my suggestion would be that we as a staff can gather some optional trainings, workshops, things like that are intended for city council members, bring a package to city council, and we can potentially discuss purchasing or enrolling in one of these for the city council members, but have a little bit more information on a variety of possible trainings at that point.
Okay. So is there, is there anything on there that connects with that we could tie that in with that's also on here?
Yeah, I think that the role of the city council and management initiatives was one that stuck out to me that tied into that.
Does
the collective vision for the city could potentially be tied into that as well.
Something could be merged into that,
yeah.
Because there's a lot there, obviously, and then trying to direct staff to dig into that more. I want to give some more substance where they can tie some things in with it,
Sure.
Well, I've thoughts. With that, if you start, if you start some things that you think might address that, also, we prepare for a discussion on some of those things.
Correct.
Once it's an agenda item, I'm sure that we'll all have discussion and start to round out some of the ways to take it. But
Correct.
I think having a discussion is one of the great ways to start. I know Alderperson Warball has. Go ahead, Warball.
So just a thought on that piece is perhaps Metro West or the Illinois Municipal League has training materials that we can provide.
There are a number of resources.
I'm assuming that's kind of where we're going with that as far as training, is what it sounds like. So I don't know.
Yeah, there are a variety of resources that staff can gather and provide. I just want to make sure that we have a majority of council in support of exploring those and presenting those before we went down that route. So that's really, I'm looking for a yes or no on each of those for this evening so that we can prepare those items.
Consensus on having staff look into that more? Nod your head, yes.
Yes.
Sure. Yes.
And I think those other two tie into that.
Okay, perfect.
Right. Okay.
And just maybe a stretch, Heather, but
Yes.
also if we look at supporting local businesses, purchasing policies might be a part of management initiatives.
Yeah, I see that one a little separately, only because I know that there's been a lengthier discussion I've had with Alderperson Silkaitis on that one, specifically about local impact.
Look at that as management initiatives, if you could.
I definitely see that, but I know the background on that one a little bit better.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I had one quick question, too. Can you look into the logistics of it, I guess? I know Mr. Warball brought up the fact that it's probably, online or some kind of research. But is there any logistics where we can do it in groups, or that's my concern?
And those are the exact kind of things that we'll present as potentially an in-person day, online training modules, different things like that. So we'll provide a variety of options and potential that we can have a little bit more discussion and debate on what makes most sense for it, and especially as we go into future years for budgeting purposes.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Go ahead.
The next one would be enhancing the requirements of the existing ethics ordinance. I actually think this was Jamie that brought this up initially. I know that we'd had some discussion prior to the previous election about some potential changes to the ethics ordinance. Now, Alderperson Munns, I don't know if you were going down the route of the same discussion that we already had, or if you were looking in a different direction for the changes to that, but wanted to get some direction on that one.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if we could get something a little bit more rich. I know that we do the basic minimum that is required by the state of Illinois, but I think that there's some options out there with some other municipalities. If you look at Naperville, they have some richer requirements. There are some other municipalities that also have them, and I'd just like to see what options we have to maybe make our ordinance a little bit more strong, I think.
Could you perhaps be more targeted on what you're requiring?
I don't
When
have
say
a
that-
specific
When
requirement.
I say that, maybe come up with some what you think, and then it's hard for us to just say, yeah, just dig into whatever.
I think there's a few things that I've heard from residents that they would like to see something, the words they use are around transparency. So I think they would like to see something where it's more clear to them when, for example, people come up to speak and they are talking about a specific development, for example. Have they been involved in that process? And maybe identifying that they are either someone who worked for that company or that they are someone who has donated money to that campaign. Something like that, or that they have a financial investment, I guess, is something that is a concern to certain residents.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Ron.
I'm complete support of this ethics ordinance, going through the process. I think we have the discussion, we should have our ethics attorney here to see what we can and cannot do legally, instead of talking about stuff that we know we can't implement.
Well, and that is certainly the intent, because this will get into a lot of different issues, a lot of legal implications, a lot of statutory implications. So if we are going to go down that road, we want to make sure that we are able to have the correct resources present and the correct research done, because that will be a very lengthy and different type of discussion than simply passing an ordinance. So we just want to make sure that if we do go down that path, we have the consensus because of the resources it will take to invest in that.
It's possible to actually have him here at a meeting, so he could say, no, you can't do that. That way, the conversation's over on that subject, we move on and say, yeah, that's a good idea, and then we find out, no, we can't do it.
Yes, but I can only guess that he will not give you a yes or a no on the spot to every question. He's going to want to take a list back and do some research.
He would hear him directly. That's a suggestion. Sure.
Go ahead, David.
Kind of further flesh out, I would as I too support it, and Jamie and I, we've talked about this, and I think if staff needs some direction, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the city of Naperville my understanding has a good benchmark, if that's an example for the staff to take a look at.
I will say most cities do, and this is just for pure statement, follow the state statute just because it's been vetted and it's been explored by all of the case law. So the majority of municipalities do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, follow what the state statute says on it.
Sure.
There's certainly not everybody does that, but there's a rationale behind that.
But I mean, I think they have a sufficiently robust ordinance that we could, from our research and this understanding, that we could go off of. That's just a suggestion. And
I think really it's all about the intent of the city council and what type of things we want to monitor. And I'll use Batavia's single-use bag tax as an example. That is certainly more robust than any single-use bag tax we have. That doesn't make it better or worse. It's just different, and it's a priority thing. So it's about the city council priorities in that example.
Go ahead, Warble.
Yeah, I'm in favor of looking into enhancing our ethics ordinance. For me specifically, I want to look into the role of nonprofits that we fund with city tax dollars and their compliance with the IRS code as a 501c3, especially when it comes to participating in campaigns. So I've seen a lot of stuff that kind of alarmed me. I'm not sure if they're aware or not aware of it, but I think we should have some language or a policy that they need to comply with if they want to use city tax dollars. So that's, for me, that's the piece of it for me. So.
And all those specifics are things I know that we can explore. Certainly, I think Chairperson Weber would like some direction on giving everybody a yes or a no if they want to explore it, so I certainly appreciate that.
Go ahead, Ed.
I guess I would just add, I'd like to see some more detailed examples of where there was an ethics violation, or maybe even coming close to crossing the line, because quite honestly, I'm not aware of anything that stands out.
I'm not aware of any formal complaints that have been made. I know that we've looked into a couple issues that have been determined not to be any violations, but that's all I'm aware of.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so do we have a consensus to obviously enhance requirements and then look into ethics ordinance?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Any hard no's?
No.
The ethics officer, I definitely think we should recommend.
All right, so do you have a consensus on that one?
Okay, thank you. The next one is regarding a financial dashboard to offer a quick overview of the city's financial wellness. And I think that one ties in as well with a quarterly, I'm trying to find it where it is, quarterly reports on the, quarterly progress reports on the budget. This is actually something that Bill Hanna and I have been discussing for some time, so I don't know that we actually need any further discussion on this at this point other than us working on the staff level and presenting it, but certainly that was included in the list at the workshop, so I didn't want to ignore that component of it, but it is something that we are working on with the staff level. I'm assuming there's no no's or opposition to that idea, but just wanted to give council that update.
As soon as possible.
Yep, I don't think you see any objections, yep, definitely to that one.
This one I was going to need help with, which is the role of the city council in management initiatives.
Okay. Discussions on that?
What's
I
that?
don't know who came up with it, but
I think that was Mr. Vongart's.
I thought that was David's.
No, I did the liquor licenses, buddy.
did that kind of tie in? It might kind of tie in more with some of that, the original one, the city through team building leadership training. It might kind of tie into some of that. So maybe that's a redundancy. No?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
All right, well, if there is any recollection on that one, we can certainly have further discussion on it. All right, and I know this one was Alderperson Silkaitis because we've had this discussion. It was about supporting local businesses via purchasing policies, and that was about prioritizing local businesses over outside of the city businesses in terms of purchases. And just a little background for, I know at least one of the discussion points that we've had was in regards to sending some of our fleet maintenance out and using businesses outside of the city. AJ Reineking in Public Works is very good about vetting local businesses. Yes, I'm sorry. Apologies. Okay. About vetting local businesses and prioritizing those internally. Where we typically do not use those local businesses is because we've got a significant timing delay, a significant cost delay, or typically a significant resource issue. And I'll use a lumber example that he's provided me is that we typically buy our lumber from Menards in West Chicago because of the quality and the quickness with which we can actually attain that lumber. And if I'm speaking out of turn, please correct me. But it's because of that issue. So we get a better quality, and the amount that we use, we just prioritize them. We're not able to get that same thing locally. So those are the type of scenarios in which we are going outside the city, but it is a typical priority for within the city as well. No, that's not a formal documentation of as long as a local business is within 10% of an outside business that we're prioritizing that. I would just personally be a little bit concerned about prioritizing local when we have sometimes quality issues, sometimes delays in some of our repairs on our vehicles, and I'm talking 6 to 8, 12-month delays in some of these parts that we're requesting. So that's typically been the rationale for why that's happened. Not to say it's every single time, but I do think AJ does a very good job of making sure he's monitoring those on individual projects. So that was the discussion, if I accurately portrayed it.
We used to have an unwritten ordinance where if the local bid was within 10% of the lowest bid, we would give it to the local business, it's 10% higher, to support our businesses in town. I mean, and it worked out well. I think we should, I understand your concerns, don't get me wrong, but I would like to at least have a trial period just to see. If it doesn't work out, then fine, but I think we should go out of our way to support our businesses. Even if it's 10% more. My opinion. I'm just speaking for myself.
And this is absolutely a policy determination by City Council. Staff will certainly carry out whatever directive we have, but in light of some of the discussions that we've had recently about finding additional revenue sources, cutting costs where we can, these are the type of things that start to creep up on us where we're trying to manage costs with a limited revenue stream. And when we have a prioritization where we can't, prioritize what the cost is and make sure we are saving the dollars where we can, this starts to create that balance issue where we can't satisfy both of those concerns. So just wanting council to be aware of both of those issues as they're considering that.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I love the idea of this, and I spent some time thinking of it. One of the things with a lot of experience as a local business person, I don't know how we would make a policy, like formalize it. I mean, other than an informal policy, I think we absolutely should. We should always try and do things local because it's actually amazing how often, even things, owning and running in a local supermarket where there was something that we were doing, lunch was brought in and they're like, yeah, from Panera. I was like, It's literally to discuss the Blue Goose. This is, you know, and I mean, but I don't know how to do it because you see the other side, like how far is too far? Like how would you put a rule on what's local? You know, like a business that's in St. Charles but owned by somebody in Naperville, or somebody who is a resident that's very involved and the business is in Geneva. It's just because I see sometimes like there was something this summer where I saw in Geneva, they did something and they cut a really weird line because sometimes it can create bad feelings too. And I mean, I like the idea. I don't know how to, like, I spent some time thinking about it.
If we can do it, I agree. I agree.
I think we should absolutely have an informal policy.
And we do. That is in place
incredibly,
right now.
like, we should culturally absolutely push to, and then I just don't know how to write it down.
Something to work on, but
No, it's a great idea.
okay, Paul, I can't believe you agree.
Go ahead, Verbal.
Perhaps we can look at other communities that do this and just get an example, bring some examples of what other communities do.
I've seen it with construction projects regularly where they'll prioritize a construction bid that's within a certain percentage. But like I said, this is really to get the directive on whether or not we want to explore those exact issues because, like I said, it just takes time and resources to research each one of these topics. So before we go down that path, if we've got a majority consensus as a yes on explore it, we'll gather the research and present it at a future meeting.
Maybe we can pick a singular
Construction,
like that.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
pick a major
Construction.
category
Yeah.
where, right.
And just kind of look into it.
Yeah, I think it's,
I really like the idea of keeping it informal, though. I think,
Oh, for sure.
I think everybody makes the best decisions going forward. And when we can support, great, but the reputation of companies has to be considered, like you said, but also time, efficiency, everything. I think there's nobody in here who's going to be like, no, we do not want to support our businesses when we can. However, we do have to be cognizant of the fact that what is best for the city still too. And Paul, I think you bring up a very good point too. Define local. You know, is it the store in town or is it the person that owns it? I mean, I think that's a very fair question too. But as long as informally we've been doing it and it seems to be moving well, I think that's pretty fair.
I would agree.
There was one thing that I thought about, and I think this is something that we could do. It would be kind of ceremonial, but you know what? Ceremony sometimes can be very important. I wouldn't mind if we figured it to fit like once a year to pass a resolution that we would make the greatest effort to support our local businesses, you know, with purchasing and encouraging. I mean, we could do something like that. That would be the day that we recognize how important our local businesses and just a referendum. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, like you know, or like not referendum, but
proclamation.
Just a resolution.
Yeah.
There we go. I would love to do a resolution that we're going to try and make every effort to do those things, you know, because it's communicating to the local businesses, but then everybody gets to use their judgment. But I think doing something makes some sense.
And I would agree with everything that Mark said about it remaining informal as it is right now.
Yeah.
All right, so is that giving you any direction?
I was going to say, I mean, maybe if we could just get a yes or no from everybody. It sounds like informal was the way to go. I know I heard a couple of hard yeses, but it seems like the way that we're operating right now. And I do want to, if anybody wants to sit down, I'm sorry, Pete, to do this again, but AJ and chat with him about this just because I know he's educated me on this very well and he takes it very seriously looking at each one of these things. He's provided detailed emails of why his rationale is, and he is looking at these things each time he's doing a lot of those purchases for the city. So, you know, I'm happy to sit down. I'm sure Pete's happy to sit down as well with any of his staff to clarify those exact things if anybody has any concerns. And then if for some reason that flips after those discussions, we can bring it back for discussion again.
Great. Okay. So I think the informal thing was the consensus then? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next is placing a limit on the number of liquor licenses allowed in the city. I know Alderperson Petrola and I have had a few discussions about limiting the ordinance so that each approval would have to come through city council and just capping the number of liquor licenses. So that just brings up the issue of concentration. Are you able to expand outside of those areas once they're all taken up and those type of things?
So, right, and I've had conversations with the chief. I think I've talked to Derek as well. I guess to further massage this a little bit, I would say maybe broaden it to say, because thank you for your expertise, you know, that's what discussion's for. Utilizing and understanding the role of the issuance of these licenses and how it could impact, you know, not only economic development, but just planning in general. I mean, we're both liquor commissioners, right? So, I mean, as a liquor commissioner, I've enjoyed and I like to see, and I see these businesses coming in, but is there a way, is it a lever that we can pull? Is it an incentive that we can use, a tool that we can use rather than just issuing, you know, whether it's a limit in a particular zone, what have you? That's the type of nuances that I want to discuss, not just saying 10 licenses
Sure.
and that's it. You know, nothing like that. So that's what I just wanted to flesh that out a little bit more, so.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I'm glad Alderperson Petrola stated at the end, not limiting it, because I will say, going back a few years, we were at a point where we had anywhere from 38, the cap was like 38 to 43 maybe, from what I remember. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with capping a number of licenses, but at that time, 43, call it that number, we didn't have the type of growth or that exponential growth that we're seeing now, whether it's currently or future growth with developments that are down the road. And so back then, when somebody would come in, you know, for a development, they'd also have to fight for a license. We'd have to have literally a business leave or go under to get this license. There was another process to kind of go around it, but it was a little bit difficult as well. So I would just refrain from limiting the number of licenses. So
David, just to clarify, what did you mean by, like, I like this idea of zones, but can you just clarify kind of what you mean by? Because if it's what I'm thinking, it's like, all right, in so many zones, so many, so you're not limiting an encounter. Am I thinking around? Am I not thinking what you're kind of?
You know, like, okay, let's just discuss what we've all heard. Well, most of us maybe have heard that. Okay, we're a town. We have bars everywhere in St. Charles, right? That's in our downtown district, right? So how could we, again, I patronize them, I have no problem with them whatsoever. Can we utilize our influence as a policymaking body and our zones to encourage, rather, like, okay, case in point, a business goes out of business or leaves downtown, what pops in there? Historically, recently, we've seen, we're opening up a pub, right? Which is fine, whatever. If it doesn't work, it'll go out of business. That's the free market. But is there a mechanism, or can we be creative and planners and utilize our tools, and one of them being the licensing of liquor sales, to encourage diverse business and, you know, curate. Let's get past this low-hanging fruit and do something else, you know, maybe. I don't know. I mean, is it, without being too planning, can we still... Again, you're probably like, you've heard this a zillion times from me, but how can we utilize that as a tool?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit the way that other towns do it, and it's either, you know, a limitation within certain districts or zones or those type of things. But a lot of the times what you see with liquor licenses, they're self-regulating. You're not going to get the oversaturation because those businesses aren't going to be able to sustain when there's too many, so they almost regulate themselves in that manner. And you don't want to limit, if we've got a really good business that wants to add a supplement and have a liquor license as part of their model, shutting them down and being unable to open just because of that nuance. So it's a policy consideration and what the city council views for the town. But, you know, Nick, I know that you get relatively involved with liquor as well. I don't know if you've got anything that you want to add about that idea of them being self-regulating.
Yeah, you know, a lot of our communities do what you said earlier and just put a fixed number on the number of licenses by category.
Right.
I don't think I've ever been involved in a zonal approach to a number of licenses. Let the free market figure out what's going to work or not work. I like the idea, though, of the incentive part of it. You know, how does that work in the development world? But in fact, I think our code already provides that when a license goes away, it's automatically removed from our numbers, and no new licenses can be approved until you approve it.
City council approves them.
So right now, you have a self-controlling mechanism in your liquor code that's got to come to you.
Sure.
So you've got that ability, absent a strict, perhaps moratorium on saying no licenses, but how workable is that? I'm not too sure how to accomplish.
I don't know. I've heard examples of percentage of sales has to be food or something, and
that's more about the category.
So this is what I'm talking about. This is what I want to talk more about. Like can we get some data that shows that those types of considerations have any impact on planning decisions, or and within a municipality, in a downtown district, in a corridor district, whatever, you know? That's just what I I don't want to make a policy tonight. I just want to
No, and I'm not
talk
asking
more
that. I
about
think
it,
really what I
right?
was looking for is
Yeah.
consensus on, yes, we want to explore
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then really what we're
Exploration.
exploring,
Yes,
because
yes.
for us to prepare things from a staff level, gather these, sample ordinances or
Correct.
whatever it may be, just trying to figure out exactly what we're trying to research so that we can present something
Sure.
articulately.
I mean, with our discussions, that makes sense what I'm trying to suggest, I assume.
Let's hear from some other council
Okay.
members. Ron, go ahead.
Years ago, we had an ordinance where there were only so many liquor licenses in town. Every time someone wanted a liquor license, we had to change the ordinance to allow one more. And then we kept doing that, one more. That's why we don't have a cap anymore. But is there a point where we have too many bars in town? Is there a point? I don't know. It just seems we have a lot of them, taking up a lot of downtown space. I'd like to see something else there. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but I don't know. I've had people complain, you got too many bars downtown.
One thing I'd like to add to that, to this whole discussion is, everyone that owns a restaurant, they don't think there should be more restaurants. Everyone that owns a car repair shop, there shouldn't be more car repair shops. And when these properties come available, nobody is stopping anybody from reaching out to lease that property. It's a true free market. The market will dictate who's going to go in there. The market will dictate who's going to survive, and the way the operator can decide who's going to survive. And that goes for any industry. So I just like to be very careful on picking on one singular industry.
But, okay, agreed with you.
Based on,
right.
on how you feel.
Except the fact that we do have a liquor license. We do have that control. We don't have control for other businesses in town, but liquor license, we can't control.
So we do have control.
Right.
Of the liquor license.
Collectively, we all vote on every single one of those.
Right, and I don't know, I'm just telling you what I hear from people. You drive through town, or I talk to them, you got a lot of bars downtown. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but where is the point where you have to start trying to get other businesses? Now, granted, that's our decision too, at least when it comes to the liquor license. I completely agreed. I don't know, it's just a thought, that's all.
Jamie, go ahead.
So I got two things on that. One, we do have control over other things, and that's zoning. So those are things I would like to look at. But, the other is that I do want to be aware of the fact that we have a whole eastern corridor that has a lot of potential development, and I don't want to impact that ability for liquor licenses for restaurants, for, other types of, we have hair salons that have liquor licenses. So I want to make sure that we aren't stopping those types of businesses from operating or having the full breadth of business opportunity through something like this. But I would be fine with exploring this and just seeing what options there are, if that's what we're looking at.
I think we have to be, I'm definitely somebody who believes in the free market. Everything that comes before us, any liquor license that comes before us, we vet the owner, because yes, it's a more intense use. You want to make sure that you're not handing out liquor licenses to people that shouldn't have them. But anytime you abridge, free market, like our downtown retail overlay, I think we put in a lot of places we end up breaking it because we put an undue burden on property owners, because you're telling them, you're dictating very, very seriously what can go in there, and a lot of the times you're not changing the economics, and so you have viable businesses that can't use those spaces, and it should be avoided. I mean, it's a way to create blight more than anything. And that being said, I think that you can get into a place where you think you're making good arguments and you're not. I think of, a former alderman, a good friend, somebody who I'd always respected, but I'd never liked that he voted no on every single liquor license, even though he had no problem going to the bar, but he was trying to make a point, but I thought it was a disingenuous argument. I mean, we have the amount of bars that our economy will support, and to say that we have too many or too few, well, I mean, we all want no blight in this world, and I think it's a cheap argument sometimes, to say that I think that we have an amazing city. These are reputable businesses with good people who pay taxes. I don't think that we have problems with crime. We have one of the most amazing communities ever. I think we spend too much time on this. In fact, up here, by echoing some of these things that we have to more, I mean, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we sometimes can create the problem of perception because everybody's listening to what we say. And if we take some of those things serious without even taking a look at the market forces that say, we'll have as many of any use as the market, as there's room in the market, but some of those questions, they create the problems that, that might not be there without it. Anyway, I think we should let the market work, and I don't know that there's really fertile ground down this road. That's my thought.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So I'm going to tie this with the ethics ordinance. I don't mind asking staff to explore as long as we are being specific. I don't want to send staff on an expedition for, well, tell us, how we can change. What do you specifically want to see? Do you want to see zones? Do you want to see the number? Do you want to see X? I'm not saying I'm not asking. I'm just saying like I think to tackle some of these, to send staff out to go look at Naperville's ethics code. What are we looking for? What specifically are the concerns? I'm interested in learning more because maybe there's something that I'm not seeing, or there's something that we're missing, or there's an issue. For a couple of these, I think you have to be careful. I think you have to be pinpoint about what your ask is. Otherwise, you're sending staff out to go explore how you want to change the liquor license. I'm not sure what you want me to find because there's so many examples out there, like we've all just talked about. And I think be careful about the vagueness that you're sending staff out with some of these issues, because I don't think you're going to necessarily like the results, and it's going to turn into a larger project.
And alternatively, just to add on to that point, because I agree with that, perhaps those two topics that you just brought up, the ethics and the liquor, are more appropriate in a second workshop where we explore and have more discussion on those versus staff investing time to try to sort of sort through some of those issues on our own. Perhaps that can be an opportunity for City Council to come together and talk about what they would and would not like to see. Now, certainly there will have to be follow-up to that, but that just, I think, is more appropriate for that type of discussion.
So is there a consensus to bring that to a workshop for more discussion?
And that, to me, pairs the same way with the ethics as well.
Because then my thoughts are you could get to Ryan's point, is get to what are we specifically looking for. Correct. Otherwise, we're kind of hoping the spaghetti sticks to the wall, and we're not sure what that looks like. But if you get very specific and say these are 2 or 3 ethics things that might be of concern to everybody or a larger group, it's like the liquor licenses and how do we manage what kind of businesses go into either our liquor license classes or in the zones. So that might be a little more specific than wasting a lot of time on some generalities that might focus.
And I think that gives council members an opportunity to potentially look at maybe some other things that they're interested in and maybe come with some of those discussion points as well, rather than staff just kind of guessing at those.
I know there's 2 more aldermen that want to make comments. Are you going to add anything new?
I just want to say I think the focus should be maybe a category, a specific category. I don't want to limit it as a whole. I just think, for me specifically, I think to achieve business diversity downtown, I think, look at a category. Maybe there's just a bar that opens up with no food. Years ago, I think there was a requirement to always have a kitchen or food. Maybe that's something to look at and say maybe that specific category, because there's limited investment when you don't put a kitchen in or something. I'm just giving an example.
And I think that exact point is why there's a lot to unpack with liquor, and there can be a lot of different thoughts, changes, amendments, suggestions. So there are some suggestions that at a staff level I know we want to make as well. So that might wrap nicely into that type of discussion where we can sort of tackle it all at once in a more discussion-based.
Yeah, I think a workshop is fine, though.
Yeah, and specifically, Alderman Bongard, I would like to get the opinions of staff, the police perspective, the planning perspective, Derek's perspective. I know we talked about this. How, we're dealing with Venn diagrams here. I'm seeing things are overlapping. Sure. It's not this vacuum. So Nick's opinion as well. So the workshop
I think we can, workshop.
is the best.
Plan that for the ethics ordinance too.
I just wanted to add, I'd like to see us maintain a business-friendly environment, and in that regard, what I mean is not talking about just giving out liquor licenses. Everyone stated we have control over that, so we can decide who gets one, who doesn't, based on their qualifications, of course. But, the last thing I want to see is a developer come with a comprehensive plan, come back with a development plan, go through all the steps, and then we're in just either it lingers out there or we're in a position not to give them a license. I think that's just going to put a dent in what we have had over the last 10 or 12 years, an extremely business-friendly environment.
You have your consensus there?
Yep.
Thank you.
Next is the Piano Factory Bridge revitalization timeline and perhaps the historical designation. I know there are some nuances to that can complicate. It is a rather expensive project as well. I think that's an easy enough discussion if council is interested in exploring that. Not to say yes or no to doing it tonight, but we can gather the information and the background on that if council would like that.
I'll let Mr. Wirball just kind of start off.
I think it's a historical asset for the city, and I think the first step really is a fairly simple one, and that's just to get a local landmark. Once you achieve a local landmark, it creates a little more recognition for the bridge, and then we perhaps will get some grants from maybe the Grand Victoria Casino, things like that, to help with the funding of the repairs and things like that. So for me, that's the first step, and then certainly we can talk about everything else as far as a timeline, funding, things like that.
And that's absolutely true. Also does tie our hands a little bit in terms of what we have to do and what we can do with that. So that's just a flip side to consider as well, but that's certainly something that we can present at a committee meeting if council wants to explore that.
Maybe, Brian, maybe you could look into it from the historical perspective and with the museum and see if...
I actually had a conversation with Al Watts at Preservation Partners, and he is willing to assist us with the landmark piece of it if we're willing to work with him.
And I think that's just something that staff would like city council direction on, just because of the implications of that it's not only a positive to have that, it, like I said, will impact us in other ways as well, and I just want to make sure council's aware of those before we go down that road.
Is there any other questions, or is there a consensus to go ahead and just have staff look into this more? Yes. Okay. Sure.
Next one, similar, I think is simple enough to discuss, is regarding burying overhead power lines at Riverside. That's a cost measure, very expensive cost measure. And again, same theme that we're hitting all night is that staff is just trying to balance our revenue sources, making sure that we're keeping our tax base as low as possible and tapping into our revenue streams. These are the type of projects that I know city council really wants to see, but often end up in that sort of no man's land, just because we don't have all these excess funds every year to do some of these type of projects. But it's something that we can get a dollar amount tied to and see if council is interested in exploring it.
Yeah, so I was the one that brought this up. I just noticed, all the development on the west side of the river, obviously they removed all the overhead lines, and it just looks a lot cleaner.
It does, yeah.
And now with things that are going on the east side, I just see that as, especially down Riverside, I just see that as an eyesore that, moving to the next century, maybe we can get more modern with that. That was my reason behind it. So
I love it.
I would be interested to know what it would cost, if there's questions or whatever.
No, I'm based on what Chair Weber is stating. I guess the way I'd look at it is there anything in some, or can we put something in a plan moving forward that requires us to go down that path?
Yeah, Russ,
when there's new development and all that.
Are you talking about just for this or future development?
Anytime we're doing reconstruction that maybe is massive, that's very expensive to do, is that something we could tie in or start looking at doing if it makes sense?
Yeah, at least in connection with development, we haven't in the past required developers or property owners to bury overhead lines. I know that's something that's a considerable expense. It's typically only been done, I think, in situations where the city facilitated it and contributed to the cost, kind of did it in a larger footprint area than just one development site.
Okay. You don't want to be unfriendly to business, do you?
Well, our subdivision, for instance, has all theirs buried, so I don't know if that was part of a plan going back to Harvest Hill days and all that, but I'm just saying for future projects as we go along, just to counter what or to add to what Chair Weber was stating. And then, go ahead, I'll let you finish. I had one more question. I think we skipped one, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yes,
You're right.
but I'll wait till he's done, yes.
I apologize.
No, so is there a consensus to at least look into the potential cost of that?
Absolutely.
Yes?
Yeah.
No, we're just talking about Riverside, not
That's right.
that's just Riverside.
Good.
All right, and then I apologize, the last one of common visual elements to connect downtown.
Yes. Could I say something about that? I brought that up.
Start us off.
Mayor Vitek, or I would say Councilperson Vitek and myself back then had the opportunity to go to Greenville, South Carolina. It was a wonderful experience. It was a beautiful trip in regards to seeing how some downtowns have been improving and moving along towards goals of connection. And some of the things we saw every time we walked anywhere down, I don't know if anybody's been to Greenville, they have a beautiful bridge, you might have saw Ryan, a beautiful downtown area. Everywhere we went, we heard water. Everywhere we went, there was music. Everywhere we went, there was art, just about. And then everywhere we went, there was restaurants with, so you always felt like you were downtown, whether you were on one side or the other. So, you know, every time I talk about that, I just want to be clear, I'm just trying to see a path where everything doesn't have to be exactly the same, but if you're over in any quadrant of downtown, you feel like you're in downtown eating, not just on Fruit Street or not just over by Flagship on Fox. So I don't know if that's something we could tie into a strategic plan moving forward for the downtown area or even further out, expand it outwards, but I'd like to see that happen in the future.
Okay. Any other discussions or consensus on that? Well, Heather, it looks like, did we chop anything off the list?
Yeah, one thing.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
But I think we were able to narrow it down and make things make a little bit of sense together, as well as designate some things for workshops, which I think helps a lot too.
Okay.
So that's everything on my list, and we'll work to get those on future either workshops or committee meetings.
Thank you very much.
And then we
All right.
do have a need for executive session, just remind me.
We do. Is there any,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so I'm going to go right into executive right now? Yes? All right, I got to handle. Is there any public comment? No, I do not see any. I'd like a motion and second to go into executive to discuss pending, probable, or imminent litigation.
So moved. Second.
So moved by Mr. Bessner, seconded by Petrilla. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, everyone agrees?